Get us started, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hey everybody, great. Thanks for joining us. It's great to be here with you today. As Ashton said, we've got Molly in the background who's from our marketing team who's fielding questions. So if you have those questions for us, I'm going to get started right now. We're talking about PACs in the time of polarization, and let's start by just identifying the elephant in the room, if you will. PACs are operating in the most politically polarized environment the modern PAC has ever seen. While PAC managers are have always worked to engage a range of perspectives, they're now facing an eligible donor base that's not just ideologically diverse, they're ideologically fractured. And that has real implications for how we communicate, how we fundraise, how we lead. We've looked at, we've seen different conferences we've been to, and we've looked at different polling that's been done. And I looked at a Gallup poll as I was preparing this, and the Gallup poll said that 77% of Republicans now identify as a conservative, which is an all-time high. That includes 24% who identify as very conservative, also a record. And then meanwhile, only 18% of Republicans call themselves moderates, which is the lowest level ever recorded. On the Democratic side, 55% of those polled identify themselves as liberal. And also, that's a record for this polling. And then 19% of Democrats say they're very liberal, more than double the percentage from 30-ish years ago. Only 9% of Democrats now call themselves conservative. And so what we're talking about, what this tells us, is that the ideological center, the moderate space that PACs traditionally, or traditional PACs traditionally operated in with comfort, is shrinking. And the new challenge for PAC managers, as we think about this, is, and this divide isn't just macro political, it's not just a simple trend. It plays out inside of your eligible donor base. Younger employees and new professionals may see their personal political values as central to their identity, and may be more skeptical of PACs that don't align with those views. In many cases, they prioritize ideological alignment over issue-based policy that benefit their organization or their industries. So this can leave PAC practitioners in a tough spot. One group thinks the PAC should support more progressive policies or candidates. Another believes we've gone too far in that direction and we need to pull back. And in the middle are the people who seem just confused about what the PAC is and who it serves. Now, you may be asking why this matters. It matters because if we don't acknowledge the polarization and we don't adapt to it, we risk losing trust, participation, and ultimately the effectiveness of our PACs in the political arena and in policy crafting. That's why today's session is focused on strategies to grow your PAC across the political spectrum without compromising your mission. So we'll explore how to reframe the PAC's purpose, how to use storytelling to connect across ideological lines, how to maintain transparency and trust in what is essentially an age of skepticism. Because if we want to grow in this environment, we have to evolve with it.
And I'll note here that ultimately this isn't a challenge that we see as never having happened before in the PAC space or something that won't happen again, right? This is a pendulum that swings, and as Fir mentioned, evolving with the current climate is key here. There's some flexibility that's necessary in something that I imagine will come around again. There'll be cycles of this.
Right. And so across nearly every industry and association, PAC practitioners are telling us the same thing. It's no longer enough to simply invite people to contribute. Today's eligible employees and members want to know why they should give to the PAC, and that answer needs to align somehow with their values. One of the problems that clients are bringing to us all the time is one of attrition. In 2025, 4.18 million Americans will turn 65 years old. That means that 11,400 people will turn 65 every day this year. So many of the PACs we're working with are struggling to replace high dollar donors older high dollar donors with younger low dollar donors in the hope that they'll grow with the PAC over time. But those people have a much different sense of their own political views. In this polarized environment, people are thinking differently. They expect more transparency, more clarity, and a message that resonates personally, not just organizationally. So the question then becomes, how do we meet these people where they are? So today, to succeed, we have to be ready to answer some very hard but essential questions from potential and current donors. Some of those questions, include, what values does the PAC support? Is the PAC truly bipartisan? Does the PAC align with what I believe in? How does supporting the PAC affect me or my community? You see, for them, these aren't just surface level concerns. They reflect a new and more values-driven approach to giving, and how you as PAC practitioners answer them will define your success. So what does this mean for PAC folks? What does it mean to answer those questions? Well, it means we have to prepare for these conversations with empathy, with honesty, and with clarity. And I've put some bullet points out on this slide here that we'll talk about today. First, we're going to talk about giving criteria. And the first thing about giving criterion that I would share with you is you got to have one. It's shocking to me the number of PACs that I work with on a regular basis that don't have a giving criterion defined in any way, shape, or form. Post January 6th, many of the PACs that I work with took a breath on giving to reevaluate the recipients, and many came back from that with a much more clearly defined process. So it's important that you can easily articulate how decisions are made regarding funding. It's also important to make sure that you're able to verbalize your decision-making criterion, but also that your executives, your PAC board, your leadership team can do that as well. And that actually takes me back to a previous point, which is when we define our giving criteria, we need to have the buy-in of all of our leadership team, of our PAC board, of our PAC leaders, of our executives in government affairs. We need everyone to understand what that giving criterion encompasses, so that in the future we can rely on them to hopefully adhere to that. We know there are going to be one-offs. We know there are going to be things where we may step outside of those lines, but having a very clear criterion that's defined for folks and that's available to them makes it much easier for us to explain that the PAC isn't just willy-nilly making disbursements to candidates based on who we like. It's based on a criterion that we can define for you that you can rely on. And so here on my screen, one of the things that you're seeing down at the bottom here, and one of my points this morning was it might be necessary to document the talking points and also spend time training your team on that, but also making it publicly accessible. One of the things that Quorum allows you to do in our PAC websites is allows you to create pages that can host this kind of content. And so here, what you're seeing at the bottom is a page that I screenshot from my demo PAC website, where I've created a contribution criterion page that allows potential donors and PAC members to go to that page and see specifically what are the criterion that we're looking for in contributions that we make.
I do want to touch on that point that you made, Firm, around kind of the training piece here, kind of enabling. I think what's key in sort of implementing something like this is also getting aligned internally on how and when you want to share and how much you want to share within your universe, right? There's kind of like the very public version of this where you write these, where you share these criteria externally. There's also like, we will share this when asked. I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer to how you want to handle the distribution of this information. I think you're spot on. The key is to have a criteria to be able to touch on. And then as a PAC team, as a PAC leader, decide what the triggers are to share and to whom and how, kind of like the what the funnel of information distribution looks like with risk in mind. I think that's important as well.
You need to define internally what your transparency level will be, right? And how much you want to share and what that public facing criterion looks like. Again, we know that there are going to be one-offs. There's going to be instances where you may not adhere to that exactly based on some particular need that pops up. But the other thing is if you're a PAC that's using peer-to-peer, sort of soliciting as part of your process, if you're doing some kind of peer-to-peer campaign, or you're a PAC that's asking your PAC board to go out and solicit folks for you, you're going to want to make sure that those guys all are aligned on what that looks like in terms of the speaking points surrounding your giving criteria. Okay. Move on to the next slide. Communicating bipartisanship with data. It's nice to say that you're bipartisan, but you got to be able to prove it, right? And so we want to be able to give real data points that show the bipartisan nature of the PAC, if you are indeed. Now, I'm going to caveat that by saying there are obviously PACs that work in particular industry sectors or PACs that are in particular associations that have a leaning one way or the other, right? That because of the particular issues and the policies that are important to your particular organization, you may lean a little bit right or you may lean a little bit left. And so there's going to be, some lack of bipartisanship on a certain level that's resonant there just in your normal giving. I think owning up to that and being able to, to describe that for folks and explain why organizationally that's necessary is okay. But what we're talking about here is the ability for you to show real hard data that allows people to see that, yeah, we're not just giving to one side or the other. We're actually looking at leadership, and we're looking at who's on what committee. And it's important because, we work with this particular legislator on policy. And so showing them things like contribution breakdowns or showing them lists of the legislators that you're supporting and being able to provide that to these folks that are looking for more transparency, that are looking for a reason to trust the PAC and to give to the PAC and to be a part of the PAC. Those are all things that I think are very important, especially as we deal with people on either side of the divide. And so here, what you're seeing on my screen is I've created a report just of these are the people we've supported in the 2026 election. And so I've got a list that I've run in my system, and Quorum makes it very easy for you to do that within the Quorum PAC system. You can create a report. You can share that report out. You could potentially put that report on your PAC website, and it's something that you can do in the system that really does resonate with the donors and gives them an ability to see transparently through to those that you're supporting and makes that bipartisan argument for you. Being able to generate a report like that is invaluable in your PAC storytelling.
I'll add in here as well, I think with folks that are increasingly, both information savvy and able to access information like this that is public already, there's power in you being the one delivering it. So I think that's incredibly important as well. Like that messaging is coming from you.
Yeah, so as we're talking about communicating bipartisanship, first start with the easy stuff, publish contribution breakdowns, publish analytics, publish dashboards and reports like the ones that we showed you that Quorum PAC provides. If you don't have access to a PAC system that can provide those, think about using an AI program. Think about using an Excel, or Google Slides Google Sheets to create charts and graphs that you can share. It's relatively easy to do that within one of those programs. If you're a ChatGPT user, for example, you can go in with numbers and plug them in and ask it to give you a pie chart, and it'll generate for you a pie chart that you can then download. And you don't have to give it the exact receipt data or the exact disbursement data. You can just give it totals. We do that internally within our system in terms of your ability to run reports and your ability to do dashboards. And so, we have that capability within our software. But if you don't have the access to that, if you're using, for example, the FEC file system or something along those lines to file with your PAC, you can absolutely find other things that will allow you to do it. We'd absolutely love to talk to you about our system if it's something that you're looking to do in a greater, more sort of organized way. The other thing let me back up for 1 second. The other thing I want to highlight there too is sharing wins across the aisle and highlighting PAC governance and diversity. Sharing wins across the aisle can be things. They're activities. They don't necessarily need to be legislation that's passed Congress. Highlight specific legislative or regulatory wins for sure, but you can call out meetings that have been taken. We're working with Senator X on this particular issue, and this is how it breaks down. We're working with Congressman Y on this issue. This is how we, the progress that we've made. Spotlight work with members from both parties. It just helps communicate that bipartisanship to your members and to your donors. Reinforce the PAC's focus on policy, not so much on partisanship. You can highlight PAC governance for diversity. In other words, if you have a PAC board or you have a PAC leadership team and you have, Democrats and Republicans on that team, you can do spotlights or highlights of those folks so that you show that your leadership team is made up of a diverse group. They're not all sort of single-minded and single voting block. If you can provide that kind of information, if they're willing to give you a profile or they're willing to share information about themselves and be spotlighted, you can use that as to your advantage in terms of communicating how the PAC is bipartisan. We're going to talk about presenting data in a story format, and here we're talking about using analytics to tell the story. By presenting data in a story format, it becomes much more digestible and easier to comprehend and leads to quicker insights for people. People just process it better. The brain has a natural ability to process virtual information more quickly than it does prose. And so using analytics, creating charts and graphs, sharing them out as part of your communication strategy is something that will pay dividends in the long run beyond what you think it will when you're creating those emails or those communication pieces. Analytics influence visual data just allows for sort of easier understanding of complex data. So while we get PAC and we understand how PAC works and we get the legislative process and we get the process of contributing to candidates, people, back at the home office or people that are just rank and file employees or members may not. And so it's a more complicated topic for them. So being able to create those analytics to make it simpler, to break it down for them visually just makes it much more appealing and allows them to understand your story, your PAC story better. The narrative format of using visualization makes data more relatable and engaging, and it leads to higher retention rates. So people are much more likely to continue reading whatever it is you're sending out if you have those visuals as a part of your communications. And you have a greater likelihood of influencing actions, in this case, contributing to the PAC or joining the PAC as a member. I'm going to switch to the next slide, guys. So here's here's why visualize PAC data. Now, real quick, we talked about it, faster understanding. People just pick it up faster. It improves communication and just makes everything simpler. It enhances the decision-making process because it makes it easier to get to that response. It increases your engagement and wider accessibility. It just makes it easier for a larger number of people to understand your message. And here's an example of a dashboard. One of the ways that Quorum helps our clients leverage their data in telling the PAC story is that we offer a very robust dashboard tool that allows clients to create personalized dashboards specifically for unique audiences that are both dynamically updating so that no one has to go back in and run the dashboard again, but they're also externally shareable. And so what you're looking at here is my dashboard from my test system, and there's actually more to that screen than I can fit in the screenshot. But essentially, when I create these for a particular audience, I'm thinking about, what does my audience need to see? Do they need to see receipts? Do they need to see disbursements? Do they need to see legislative actions? Because Quorum is an all-in-one tool that can provide you with a wide range of public affairs tools and abilities, we can create dashboards that have different bits of data depending upon what the audience that you want to send this out to. And we can create it, make it externally shareable. So there's a link that we can provide to any one of these, or you can provide to your audience, and they can click on that link and see the up-to-date real-time version of that dashboard without having to log into any system anywhere. So this is a way, if you have a PAC board or you have a PAC leadership team, or if you're just sharing out to a group of potential donors and you want to create a dashboard for them to say, this is what the PAC looks like right now. They can see that. If they see it in May, they'll see the May data. When they click on it in June, they'll see the June data. When they click on it in July, they'll see the July data. And this is primarily a way for us to tell that story using the visualizations that are available in our system for anyone that's interested in what the PAC health looks like. One of the most common ways, as we touch on as you deal with this sort of fractured donor database that we talked about, you may have to find yourself justifying the PAC again. You may find yourself hitting up against long-held perceptions. We talked about empathy, we talked about understanding, we talk about people being heard. It's incumbent upon us to provide them with data, but it's also incumbent upon us to hear them out. And so it may require you to have those difficult conversations where you share your giving criteria, where you share what your decision-making process is with folks, but also hear out what their concerns are and be able to comment on those concerns, be able to with transparency and context, talk about the PAC story. So one of the things we talk about is reframing the PAC's purpose. So for many donors, the word PAC is kind of still misunderstood. They may think it's only about politics or partisanship, but we as practitioners know that the PAC is about something bigger. The PAC is actually about protecting our people. It's about strengthening our industry or our association. It's about securing the future for those folks. And so here's the real question to ask yourself and to answer in your conversation with others. Can you clearly explain how the PAC contributes to job protection, industry stability, and long-term organizational growth? So let's take a minute and talk about that as well. And before we do that, I just wanted to present you, I was trying to come up with like the top 7 or so objections that my clients hear from potential PAC donors. And you guys have heard all of these probably before, so please feel free to sing along as we go through this. The top one, the PAC is political or partisan. My small donation doesn't matter. I'm worried about privacy or retaliation. The PAC support causes I might not agree with. This feels like just another ask. The PAC benefits the company more than it does me, and I don't trust how contribution decisions are made. And those are real conversations that PAC clients are having every day with their donor base. And so as we talk about that, let's talk about combating donor perceptions. The PAC is about job protection. Like, it's about more than any single bill or law. It's about making sure the conditions are in place so our businesses or associations can thrive and grow and employ people. When we advocate for either pro-growth or pro-business or pro-association or for a particular healthcare segment, we're really advocating for people. And that's the communication that we need to be able to have with those potential donors. That's the conversation we need to have, is that we're really advocating, end of the day, for people. we talk about industry stability. In this particular time in our history, stability of any kind is sort of a misnomer, right? Like, I've looked at my stocks the last couple of weeks, last month, and just kind of shook my head and went, "Oh God."
I think it's best just to not look. I've tried to remove it from my
not to look.
homepage.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's not getting there anytime soon. Anyway, but let's be real. Like I said, is there any really stability right now? But the PAC plays a role in providing stability for our stakeholders. Without stability, organizations are left guessing about the climate that they're in. They're unable to plan. They're unable to invest, and they're unable to grow with confidence. And so we need to be able to articulate that the PAC helps to reduce the risk of disruptive regulations and unnecessary policy swings. That predictability is essential for long-term business health in whatever industry or whatever association space we're in, right? And so it's also about long-term growth. So we're talking not about quick wins. It's about playing the long game, and we have to be able to communicate that to potential donors. By aligning leaders and legislation that support long-term strategic priorities, the PAC enables our organization not to just thrive, but to evolve and lead. And that's what we wanted to do.
I'll point out too that pardon me, these sort of these different messaging tactics, I think it's also worthwhile to think about these in sort of a testing mindset. So like there's a world where different messages are going to resonate with different multi-generational members of your eligible class. That's going to range for a lot of different organizations for a lot of different reasons. A key here is to take some of these frameworks and the recommendation that we'd have is try different messaging, try segmenting your audience. We're looking again, we were talking about the challenges of hyper-partisan environment. You're probably also going to have a pretty nuanced subset of subgroups within your broader audience. It's worthwhile to think about A/B testing, tackling messaging depending on different groups within your org, whether it's by role type, seniority in the org. There's lots of different ways to filter through that data, but just a flag here that these are all really valuable, but probably have different levels of impact depending on the donors or potential donors that you're engaging with.
And A/B testing is something that I think is an interesting idea for this, Ashton. And you're right, like the people that are on this call know their organizations individually better. They know what the culture is with the organization, and you need that in order to apply any of the frameworks we're talking about today, right? But A/B testing is a great way for you when you're doing communication to think about, well, let's dip our toe in the water and see what works, what resonates with my base, right? So one of the things, and for those of you that don't know what A/B testing is, potentially, one of the things that we have in Quorum in our outbox email tool is the ability to pull up a list of potential donors, and within that list to segment out a percentage, like say 10% of your donorship and of your potential donors, and say, okay, I'm going to test my subject line, and I'm going to test my content. I'm going to test my email sender, whoever that name is that's on the email when it comes across in their mailbox. And what the system will do is, based on a couple of criteria, it'll say, okay, test, 10% got A, 10% got B, whatever the best rate of click through or whatever the best rate of click to open to click would be, that's what goes to the majority of the group. So you can set up a sort of short test of your donor base and do for lack of a better term, a marketing test to see what resonates from a language perspective with them. Often, if you look at marketing softwares and you look at marketing webinars and TED Talks and all that kind of stuff, what you'll find is that they'll say often it's the headline, whatever the subject line is, that is the thing that gets them to open the email, right? And so, often they'll say shorter is better, but you individually can test that within your own eligible base by doing this kind of A/B testing as part of your communication strategy. And so we would highly recommend that you do that if you have the opportunity to do it. And if you want to hear more about how we do it, we're happy to talk to you at any point about it.
Yeah, I think it's applying the same communication, like advanced level of communication tactics here, just like somebody's doing it kind of in an ad buying space. And the folks on this call have the benefit of knowing their audience probably better than most advertisers. I'm sure they would love to know their audience that well. I know our marketing team would.
Yeah. So we lastly, as we're talking about combating the donor perceptions here, depoliticize the ask. Lean on the we and not the me. We want to reinforce the idea that PAC is about shared voices. We want to reinforce the idea that contribution is about pooling our resources. We want to reinforce the idea that folks that object in one way or another to sort of PAC giving criteria or anything like that should be working from the inside and not from the outside. I don't recall who it was, but I remember being in a conference in the last year where someone was talking in a session. Someone was talking about they had a objector. I'm going to call him an objector. Somebody that had a problem with how sort of the PAC in theory was being run, and they actually went to that person and had communication with them and sat with them and talked with them and heard them and everything. And by the time they were done, they had a PAC contributor and more or less an ambassador. And so you can have those kinds of conversations if you're depoliticizing the ask and you're sort of pitching the PAC as, we together are working towards a common goal. Again, reinforce nonpartisan purpose of the PAC. PAC is about jobs, PAC is about industry, PAC is about future. And then I just put this one in there because I thought it was cool. The PAC is fundamentally about protecting what we have and building what's next. If we can frame that, you get the framing reference in my image there, frame that in a way that resonates with our donor base, then we can shift that conversation away from what the PAC is perceived to be and what it actually is. So let's talk about storytelling for a couple of minutes. One of the things I like, Daniel Pink, Daniel Pink has got a bunch of books out there. He's very thoughtful, interesting, some of his concepts. And he had this quote. It says, "The future belongs to a different kind of person with a different kind of mind: artists, inventors, storytellers, creative and holistic right brain thinkers." For all of the ideas about analytics and including analytics, we also need to be storytellers. We need to be creative. We need to be thinking about how we tell the story of the PAC. Seth Godin, author and strategist, also said that marketing is no longer about the stuff that you make, but rather about the stories that you tell. And I think he's right. It is about connecting people with stories and being able to convey the message of the PAC in a new and sort of fresh way. It's not just about giving money. It's about what the PAC does, the greater good, if you will. And so as we talk about that, we're talking about sort of the goals in our storytelling should be that we can educate people about what the PAC is and what it does, right? That we can have those conversations about how the PAC operates sort of functionally, but also what the PAC represents in terms of how it benefits the greater good, how it benefits the organization as a whole and everybody within it. As we do that, we want those communications to build relationship and ultimately build trust. I can't ask you for something and have you give it to me without you having some relationship or trust with me. I'm not just able to come and ask you to give me $2,500 a year if I don't have some kind of relationship with you, or the PAC doesn't have some kind of relationship with you. And so what we're doing as we're doing the storytelling, as we're telling the story of the PAC, as we're creating a communication strategy, we're building relationship and trust so that when the ask does come, we'll be able to lean in on that relationship and that trust that we built. And then the show value, like Why is the PAC important to me? What does it do for me? Show the value of the PAC. And for some people, that's going to be, if you're communicating with them what's going on the Hill. Some people like news. I do. And so if you're one of those PACs that's considering sending out a regular newsletter that talks about all of the wins on the Hill or the meetings that were taken or the work that you're doing in the policy shop, do it. Share that information, because you're showing value to the end user. You're showing value to the potential donor, and while you're doing that, you're building that trust and relationship with them, so that when you get to the point where you're giving them the ask, they're more likely to want to contribute, more likely to want to be a part of the team. And then as we talk about tactics for that, we're talking about things like sharing employee impact stories. Now, if that's something new for you, then what we're talking about there is the ability to show how a particular issue that you're working on, or a particular piece of legislation that you're crafting, or how the PAC is beating something back, is going to affect actual individual people. And so there are, and I'm going to slide forward to here. This is an example of what an impact story an impact campaign looks like in Quorum. So one of the things that we can allow folks to do is create a campaign where the end user, the person that comes to the PAC website, or the person that comes to the grassroots website, can tell us in detail how a particular piece of legislation, how a particular policy position affected their family, affected their day-to-day lives. And when we do that, similar to a peer-to-peer campaign, it allows a peer to tell the story. You can use that content that they've provided you as a part of your communication with potential PAC donors. And instead of someone from government affairs speaking from a place of authority about a particular issue, it allows the story to be about someone like me. It carries an immediate credibility. It accesses our natural tendency towards empathy. And it creates an immediate connection between your work and the outcomes that you're trying to drive, which is increasing your donor base. If your organization does do issue-related advocacy, there's a person you're going to want to contact, whoever runs that, if it's not you, that you're going to want to partner with, so that you can go and you can get that information from them. You can use that information about what are the things that we're asking people to comment on, what are the things that we're asking people to write about, what are the things that we're publicly requesting comment on. All of those things can be used as part of your storytelling for the PAC, as to what the greater government affairs apparatus is doing and why the PAC as a piece of that is important. It's a great way to engage your base and use a natural peer-to-peer connection to accentuate the importance of having a seat at the table on important policy decisions. All right, and so we've talked about, a clear giving criteria, check. We've talked about the ability to demonstrate bipartisanship, check. We've talked about analytics and how to tell a story with visuals, check. We've talked about an ability to address sort of the perceptions that potential donors might have about the PAC, check. But what about the communication plan? And so as I talk to PAC practitioners, I'm surprised when I do at the sheer number of people, and I'm not, the folks that are on this call may not be in that grouping, but I'm surprised at the sheer number of PACs that I work with that have no discernible communication plan so that they can communicate value to their members or their employees. And that's why I think it's imperative that once we've developed the tools to reframe the PAC's purpose, to communicate bipartisanship, and to tell the PAC story with visual data, then we have to have an intentional campaign to educate to build trust and credibility and to show value before the ask comes. And so the best communication plans that I've seen are strategic in terms of both their theme and their tone. They educate and inform more than they ask. And I've created a very simple example here, but the point is it's not really in the specifics, but in the plan itself. And my experience is that every organization is different. We talked about that. Every organization has a different culture. We talked about that. And so there's no one right way to create the plan. I just hope you have one. And so a couple of best practices that I've sort of gleaned from folks and I've talked to folks about and I've seen in successful PACs are, first of all, set up your expected communication plan for the PAC year. Consider what the regular organizational and departmental events and activities that you normally have are and build them into your plan. Build your plan around them. So if you have a meeting that you do, if you're an association that has an annual meeting, like build that communication plan into the lead up to that annual meeting. If you're a corporate and you have a particular corporate event that goes on, like piggyback on that and lead into that so that you're part of the story as the PAC. The second thing is get buy-in from your internal stakeholders, especially if you need approval on sending out content or the rate at which you can send out content from your internal staff. And so just like we talked about the giving criteria, you need to have the buy-in of like the whole team on that. Similarly, for a communication plan to work, you need to have all of the pieces in place and all of the people aligned with how you're going to do that and what your plan is. And then lead hard into policy updates, personal stories, and PAC impact to drive interest and to build relationship. That's where you can partner with your lobbyists. That's where you can partner with your legislative tracking folks. Get those pieces of information and lean into them for content so that you don't have to recreate the wheel. As we've previously mentioned, when you're talking about comms, make the comms as visually pleasing as possible. Plan for consistent but non-overwhelming outreach. So as you're thinking about this, like in this particular simple plan that I've created, it's a once-a-month touch point that alternates between educational focus and stories. And you certainly can do something like this. Your culture internally may be more story related, may be more policy update related. Whatever that works for you, but just have a consistent communication that people can rely on, so the first time it comes and then the second time it comes and the third time it comes, they know it's coming from you, but not at the point where you're overwhelming them with too much information and they're going to block you in their mailbox or kick you into the spam folder or the trash can. Prepare templates in advance and prepare your content in advance. You want to spend as much time as you can crafting your messaging and reading over it again and again to refine it. You know, I find that people that write content generally will write it and then go walk away from it and then rewrite it and walk away from it and rewrite it maybe again. So make a couple passes at it, but build yourself in time. I did a blog post last week. We were talking about common mistakes in PAC filing. And if you haven't seen that, it's on quorum.us. You can see it there. But one of the things we were trying to tell people is that you need to build in your calendar and work backwards from your filing deadline. Work backwards from when you want to send your emails out. Set up a calendar. Send up reminders on your calendar so that you know, hey, I've got to get this done this week because it's going out next week, or something along those lines. Just be prepared in that way. And that way, if you need to get content from other staff members, you're not asking at the last minute. You're able to ask in advance and then potentially remind them again if they don't get back to you. The next point was actually seek help from, if necessary, from your colleagues and your vendors. Your vendors have ideas. You can ask us what we think. You can ask us what other people are doing. You can ask us what best practices are for creating something within our system. Your colleagues will have ideas as well. Groupthink is not a bad thing. If you can put together a committee of people that can help you, it's so much easier that way. And then the last point I want to make it with regard to communication is, and I mean this truly, make AI your friend. AI is changing the world, whether we like it or not. And AI can do many things. I'm not suggesting it write your emails for you, but I am suggesting it will do a heck of a nice first draft if you give it all of the material it needs. So if you can line up your content, if you can put down your speaking points, and then you want to draft an email, you can tell it what tone you want it in, you can tell it who the audience is, you can tell it who it's coming from, and it will write for you an initial draft that is very professional looking. You'll still need to edit it, you'll still need to check it, but it will do a good job of initial draft for you, and then all you need to do is polish it up. And it'll also do all the grammar checking and everything for you. The other thing AI can do is it can create images. It's great at creating images, especially if you have the paid versions. So one of the things that you might think about is from a visual perspective, like if you need visuals for your communications, you can allow the AI system to create, whether you're using ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever it is. You can have it actually create images for you that you can use in your content. So that is something that I would consider as well if you don't have resources to do that internally. AI will also do research for you. So if you need to know about a particular issue, or you need to know about how it affects your organization, or you need some help in defining speaking points for a particular thing that you're writing, you can ask AI to do research. ChatGPT has now deep research on it for the paid version, so you can use that as well. Quorum, by the way, is doing a new launch of Quorum Copilot 2.0 in the next week. And one of the things that you're going to be able to do within our system, or you can do within our system, is you'll be able to go in when you create emails in our outbox tool. You'll actually be able to use the internal AI to give you hints on how to better your emails, how to improve your language, and so forth. It will do that, but it will also allow you to ask questions of the database and get responses. So if you want to go in, you need to be able to go in and say, show me all the people who gave me receipts last year, gave me money last year, but didn't give me any money this year, or gave me over $500 last year, but didn't give me, or gave me under $500 this year. Something like that. The system will actually allow you to do that within it natively, so that you can find that data without having to click through multiple screens and do searches. So those are all things that I think you can use to better your communications. And so we thank you for being with us today. And if there are any questions, we'll take them. But if you don't have any questions, please feel free to have a great rest of your day. And we look forward to talking to you again. If you have any questions for Ashton and I, we're available. firm.ryan@quorum.us, ashton.berry@quorum.us. We absolutely would be happy to hear from you.